Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to take a look at the question about how the historic fight between Marvel Studios and the, well, no longer existent Fox Studios may still impact how Quake is introduced into the MCU proper. Of course, Quake was one of the main characters throughout all 7 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In fact, probably one of my favorite characters. So there will be some spoilers for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seasons 1 and 2. It's really unavoidable. Although I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you've either seen those shows or, you don't care to watch the shows, but you are excited to see Quake make it into the main MCU again. So Chloe Bennett's Twitter account has been tweeting some interesting things that certainly makes it sound like her appearance may be sooner than we would have guessed, perhaps as early as Secret Invasion, or hopefully, if nothing else, by Secret Wars. But the real question is, what type of a reintroduction will she get? Who are we going to get when she shows up in the main MCU? So let's dive right in and see what we can find out. All right, so this story does require a bit of a trip down memory lane, a bit of a history lesson, but I found all of this fascinating. I hope you will too. So things start all the way back in 1994 when Marvel sold off the rights to make X-Men movies, also Fantastic Four movies, to Fox Studios. I always wondered, why did they do that? What on earth? Why would you give this up? In fact, for the record, do you know how much it was? $2.6 million. That's how much they sold, or how much money they got for selling both X-Men and Fantastic Four. The X-Men movies alone have grossed $6 billion. Now that's gross, not net revenue, but still, I would say they sold it for pretty cheap. So why? Why would they do something like this? Well, Den of Geek has a fascinating article going through the history of this sale. Some very interesting stuff here. So in 1993, while Marvel and the comics industry as a whole seemed to be in great health, Sandman writer Neil Gaiman stood before about 3,000 retailers and gave a speech which few in attendance wanted to hear. In it, he argued, the success of the comic book market was a bubble, one brought on by encouraging collectors to buy multiple editions and hoard them up in hopes they'll one day be worth a fortune. This, Gaiman said, was akin to tulip mania, a strange period in the 17th century when the value of tulip bulbs suddenly exploded, only for the market to collapse again. He goes on to say you can sell lots and lots of comics to the same person, especially if you tell them you're investing money for high guaranteed returns. But you're selling bubbles and tulips, and one day the bubble will burst, and the tulips will rot in the warehouse. Well, he turned out to be very, very prophetic. See, publishers were themselves courting the collector market by introducing variant covers, sometimes with foil embossing and other eye-catching fancy printing techniques. These were snapped up hungrily by readers, but also by speculators, assuming they'd stumbled upon a surefire means of making money by storing up copies and selling them for profit in the future. Now, you might initially say, well, that's a good thing, right? I mean, they were making tons of money. Well, the problem was Marvel didn't know the difference between how many of these sales were speculators who were just buying up something on a short-term basis, maybe some special issues, and how many were the real readers. What was the demand for these comics? And honestly, they kept going up in price. These foil embossed covers cost a fortune. So it was very hard during this time for collectors to keep collecting, and the bubble burst, and people quit collecting. For example, this is fascinating. The shares of Marvel in 1993 were $35.70 each. 3 years later, $2.37. You don't have to be an economy major to know that going from $35 a share to $2 a share in 3 years is not good. So yes, Neil Gaiman was correct. The bubble burst and Marvel was in trouble. That is why they started selling off some of their best comic lines. Obviously, Spider-Man went to Sony, but X-Men and Fantastic Four went to Fox. So there you go. Now, I hope that helps to know a little bit of the history of why on earth they would do that. Such a bummer. Imagine if they'd never done that. Imagine if they could have kept the rights and we would have had the X-Men and the MCU from day one. Okay, well, what's next? Okay, we're now going to jump to 2004 when Daisy Johnson, a.k.a. Quake, is first introduced. She was introduced in Secret War, singular, Secret War number 2 in 2004. In the comics, she's introduced as, this may surprise you, it surprised me, the mutant daughter. That is, as in mutant, not inhuman, mutant daughter of supervillain Mr. Hyde, which I've always thought that was weird, but nonetheless. And it's his altered genetic abnormality that got passed into his daughter, making her a mutant. Very interesting. So, of course, Daisy Johnson, a.k.a. Quake, you see her with the massive gloves on there, the technologically kick-butt gloves. She was able to create like vibrating waves, basically emulating an earthquake. Really cool. That's the name Quake, obviously, right? So anyway, she was a mutant. That really fascinates me. Okay, next, and this is where we start getting to the spoilers in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. premieres, and in the very first episode, we meet Skye. Now, Skye basically had no idea of her past and wanted to learn the truth about her parents, and eventually she dropped out of high school, ran away, and joined something called the Rising Tide, and she became, I love this term, a hacktivist, a hacker activist, or a hacktivist. That eventually got her in the crosshairs with S.H.I.E.L.D. There was kind of, they were fighting against her a little bit, and then she ends up joining and then becoming a key member and a great addition to the show. So Skye first appears in 2013. Okay. Then Kamala Khan first appears. You might say, why am I bringing up Kamala Khan? But hang with me. This is very important to the story. So Kamala Khan is obviously Miss Marvel, who eventually had her show debut in 2022 on Disney+. But here's what's interesting. So in the comics, she was exposed to Terrigen Mist. That anyone exposed to Terrigen Mist who actually has the ability to be an Inhuman, that releases it in them so they get their power set. And in her case, it was the stretchy ability that she had in the comics. So originally, she was obviously came as an Inhuman into the comics. However, very interesting article that came out around the time when Kamala Khan appeared on Disney Plus, where Sana Anamet, who was the executive producer on the show, but also worked on the comics. There was an interview in Empire where she said, here's a really important thing that people do not know. When we were thinking about the character of Kamala Khan back in the day, 2012, 2013, when G. Willow Wilson, who was the writer, and myself were ideating, we originally wanted to make her a mutant. Isn't that interesting? That was the whole intention, to be able to do that, she said. Isn't that interesting? So you literally have one of the people who helped create the character saying she was originally going to be a mutant. So why wasn't she then? Well, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. We'll kind of put a pin in that. But so keep in mind, Quake first introduced as a mutant. Kamala Khan would have been a mutant. However, something around the time frame of 2014 was preventing, creating a mutant. Okay, fine. Set that aside. So then in 2014, the Phase 3 slate is revealed. Amazing to go back in time, right? And think there was a day when they were revealing Phase 3. But anyway, part of the Phase 3 slate was an Inhumans movie. And I did go back and watch the video where they released the slate and people went nuts. They were all excited. So the Inhumans were becoming very popular. People were really glad to see that on the slate. In fact, here's the full slate. Notice lower right-hand corner, November 2nd, 2018, we're supposed to get an Inhumans movie. One interesting thing, look in the upper left, though. Captain America Serpent Society? What the what? That's what it was originally going to be? I think I'm kind of glad that it ended up being Civil War. But I have heard rumors that we may see the Serpent Society showing up in Captain America 4, Sam Wilson's movie. So very interesting that they were supposed to be part of Captain America 3. But anyway, the most important thing here is Marvel is really pushing the Inhumans. Okay. Then in 2014, here's your spoilers. So hope you tuned out if you didn't want spoilers from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because Skye is revealed to be none other than Daisy Johnson, i.e. Quake. And she goes through her own form of Terrigenesis, and when she emerges, she has her Quake-like powers. So, interesting. Remember, Daisy Johnson in the comics was a mutant, but Daisy Johnson in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show is an Inhuman. Okay, the plot is thickening, isn't it? But her father, keeping with her origin the same, her father was Mr. Hyde. Kyle MacLachlan did a great job as Mr. Hyde in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then at the end of Season 2, we have the Terrigenesis crystals fall into the water and dissolve and get eaten by fish, end up in fish oil, and we have the Inhumans outbreak across the world. So, yeah, similar to how in Kamala Khan's story, the Terrigenesis mist spread over, in her case, New Jersey, and she became, her Inhuman abilities were unlocked. Similar to that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Basically, Marvel was really pushing this idea of Inhumans. We want Inhumans. We want new characters to be Inhumans. Not mutants, Inhumans. Okay, very interesting. Okay, then maybe it doesn't come as a surprise that in 2015, in the S.H.I.E.L.D. series, Volume 3, Number 7, Daisy is actually revealed to be an Inhuman. Or maybe we should say retconned to be an Inhuman. And basically now her genetic abilities were activated by her father's unstable DNA rather than through teragenesis. So in other words, she didn't go through teragenesis, but she's still an Inhuman and not a mutant. Very interesting. Okay, so it seems pretty clear that Marvel is really pushing Inhumans. Then, wow, who would have seen this coming? Who would have seen this coming? Marvel in 2015 ends the Fantastic Four. Keep in mind, this was the first comic that Marvel produced in the new era of Marvel Comics. Stan Lee's baby. It was issue 645 at this point, and they're canceling it. My goodness, what is up? Well, we do have some insight. We do have some insight from Jonathan Hickman himself. So in a Bleeding Cool article, they quote Jonathan Hickman, who was a writer of Fantastic Four and Secret Wars. And he said, Jonathan Hickman said, I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point that Marvel isn't publishing Fantastic Four because of their disagreement with Fox. We knew a year or so out that the Fantastic Four as a property wasn't going to be published at Marvel past 2015. So there you go, disagreement with Fox. It can't get any clearer than that. So what is this disagreement? Well, apparently, and understandably, we're in 2015 now, so we're well into the end of Phase 5. End of Phase 5. End of Phase 2 in 2015. So we're well into Phase 2, ending. And yet, Marvel can't use the Fantastic Four, they can't use the X-Men, and of course they can't use Spider-Man. Now, it didn't take long before an agreement with Sony resulted in Spider-Man showing up in Homecoming, right? So that was great. But no, apparently no agreement with Fantastic Four or X-Men over at Fox. Now, I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong here. You can decide that. I'm just telling you the facts that Marvel decided to play hardball. You won't work with us? We'll cancel Fantastic Four. We'll stop writing stories. We'll make people lose interest in it. And so, Fox, you try to make a movie when we're not even producing the comics. Wow. Would not have seen that coming. Oh, but it doesn't end there. Then we have the death of X. And yes, I'm sure you can guess what the X is. That would be the X-Men. Oh my goodness. I mean, personally, I liked X-Men over Fantastic Four. I know there's some people that love Fantastic Four over X-Men, but I just would never have seen this one coming. Never have seen this one coming. There's so many characters, so many titles that go with the X-Men, and they're willing to kill them off? Wow. So let's dive into this one just a little bit. So in this story, the X-Men investigated a distress signal coming from Multiple Man, who was a mutant in the comics. They come across a massive green cloud of Terrigen. Where have we heard that term before, right? And the mutants begin to feel ill. At the same time, they come across a valley of Multiple Men duplicates, all dead. And then notice in the lower right-hand corner, the original Multiple Man with sickly boils covering his skin finds his rescuers and can only say, "We figured it out way too late. The Terrigen Mists did this." Wow. So they're basically saying the same Terrigen Mists that create Inhumans or allow their powers to be unleashed kill mutants. Oh my goodness. Really, Marvel? Really? And then on top of that, Cyclops theorizes the mists will eventually become deadly to humans as well. Not sure where he got that because it hadn't happened, but nonetheless, hey, that was his theory, and announces to the world the X-Men will save humanity from the lies of the Inhumans. Oh my goodness. So basically, this kind of painted Cyclops and the X-Men in a negative light. And the intention was clear. They wanted to create a conflict, Marvel did, between the X-Men, basically as the villains, and the Inhumans. Well, and there you go. What a shock, right? Inhumans versus X-Men comes out. I mean, we all saw this coming, right? We all saw this coming. So it was so transparent that Marvel was trying to cast the Inhumans as the new group that represented marginalized and persecuted people, which is basically a title that the X-Men held. I mean, you always thought of the X-Men as the outcasts. And instead, now it's the Terrigen Mist would be used as a plot device to basically kill the mutants. Oh, my word. I mean, I never would have thought it would got to this. But again, Jonathan Hickman to the rescue to give us some of the backstory. In an article by Screen Rant, they quote him that when he joined Marvel, Hickman, he hoped to write the X-Men and continually pitched for a chance to take over the franchise, but he was regularly turned down. He actually left Marvel for a time, disappointed that he'd never written the X-Men, but upon his return, he realized things had changed. Here's the key. The Fox deal had been done, he recalled in a matter-of-fact manner, so we could do X stuff again. Well, of course, at this point in history, the Fox deal isn't done, but this is an article written, I think it was just a year ago. But my point is, we're seeing context that the reason that they were getting rid of the X-Men was because there wasn't a Fox deal yet. So basically, Marvel was bleeding Fox dry, saying, hey, guess what? We're going to kill off your characters. We're going to stop writing the stories. You're not going to have any new characters or new storylines to tell. And you're going to find it very difficult to keep making movies. We're making the X-Men the villains. So again, twice now, we've seen Hickman confirm that Fantastic Four was outright canceled, and the X-Men were turned into villains and basically marginalized in the comic universe, all because of fighting with Fox. Wow. So where on earth, you ask, is it going to go from here? Okay, well, things actually then kind of started switching direction. First of all, we finally get an Inhumans show, not a movie, in 2017, not 2018, and it's not very good. You can watch it on Disney+. I mean, it's for the completists of the world, it's worth watching. And the acting isn't awful. I mean, a couple people aren't very well cast, but really, the issue is the writing is just not great. It's just a bummer. I was so excited about this show. Well, I was excited about the movie first and then the show, but oh well, what do you do, right? So suddenly Inhumans don't land very well. And by the way, they picked up directly from that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline where the Terrigen Mists were released, basically, or crystals, through the fish oil, throughout the world. And now the Inhuman royal family who'd been living on the moon comes to Earth to check out the contamination, as they called it. So it was definitely trying to pick up on the excitement of what was happening in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And keep in mind, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was just being helpful and doing what Marvel wanted. You want to push Inhumans? We'll push Inhumans. So we'll have an outbreak across the whole world. All right, so the Inhumans show does not do very well. However, it's kind of interesting. On the flip side, Fox wasn't doing as well either. I mean, X-Men Days of Future Past, awesome movie. That was probably a high point. Logan as well. But X-Men Days of Future Past, fantastic. But Apocalypse, not so much. Made about half as much money as Days of Future Past. And of course, Dark Phoenix, the less we talk about that, the better. So it's not like Fox was doing real well either. But so Marvel's suffering and getting the Inhumans now to catch on, and Fox is having trouble with the X-Men. So what happens? Well, something must be happening because suddenly Marvel relaunches the Fantastic Four in August of 2018. They're back. Wow. In fact, don't you love it? The one they were walking away, dejected, sad. Now here they are 3 years later, coming back. So that's great. What else happens? Well, Marvel releases the Death of the Inhumans comic. So first, the X-Men are treated like, the throwaway characters, and the Inhumans, they're the bomb. We love the Inhumans. Now, oh well, not so much. So I'm not going to go into the whole storyline. It doesn't matter. Battles with the Kree and for reasons, it doesn't matter. But the bottom line is over 1,000 Inhumans are killed throughout the storyline. Mostly the lesser characters, but still. Major League Marvel turning their back on Inhumans and going, yeah, we're kind of done now. We don't need you anymore. I kind of feel terrible for them. I mean, you promote this storyline and then you don't need it anymore, and so you just ditch it? Wow. Well, then, no surprise, right? That's why this is all happening, is because Disney buys Fox. And not just X-Men and Fantastic Four. Oh, they buy the whole studio. $71.3 billion Disney paid. Hopefully it's going to be worth that in the long run. I think so, because there's going to be tons of money to be made with the X-Men and the Fantastic Four coming formally into the MCU. But still, wow. I mean, this is not a direct analogy because we're talking about buying an entire studio and all their movies versus just two entities. But still, $2.6 million. That's how much basically Marvel gave away Fantastic Four and X-Men to Fox, and then $71.3 billion for Disney to buy it all back. Wild. Again, not a direct analogy. There's more that Disney bought, but still, just interesting. Okay, so then what a surprise, right? Hey, look who's back. We love the X-Men now. And honestly, this is why I was saying it was so hard to imagine that they canceled the X-Men. Look at all those characters. Look at all those storylines. I mean, granted, I love the Fantastic Four. I was not meaning to rank one over the other. I'm just saying it's one thing to cancel one book. It's another to cancel this entire line. Multiple books. Wow. But anyway, they're back. House of X, Powers of X, they're back. July 2019. Yay. And then we jump to 2022. This is really interesting and puts a lot all in context here. We finally get Kamala Khan / Miss Marvel making her debut on Disney+. And sure enough, she ends up being a mutant. Now, that made a lot of people upset, and I understand that, especially when I understand all this history. But it really helped, again, to hear from the executive producer, hey, we were going to make her a mutant to begin with. She didn't say everything I'm saying right now, but let's put it all together. Let's just be honest here. We couldn't make her a mutant because Marvel was fighting with Fox, but we wanted her to be a mutant. So yeah, now she's been an Inhuman all these years, but we're making her a mutant because this is what we always intended. Then I'm going to throw one more piece in. Let's also be honest. How would they have made her an Inhuman? I mean, they would have had to have a Terrigen Mist explosion, or they would have had to come up with some way to do it. Very interesting that they just basically said, no, we're not going that way. She's a mutant, and it's really easy, right? Boom, you're a mutant. Done. We don't need a big explanation. Very, very interesting. I mean, this would have been a point to really pull in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and say, oh yeah, not only are they canon, because I believe they are canon until Feige says they're not, but not only are they canon, but that same mist, it took longer, but it eventually made Kamala Khan become Inhuman. Nope. They didn't want to go that way. They made her a mutant. Interesting. And then one other note. Poor dude. We do finally see Black Bolt, played by the same actor that was in the Inhumans show in the 838 universe, and he lasts about 10 seconds before he's decimated by Wanda. So I don't know how this factors into everything. I don't know if this was Marvel saying, hey, we know there are people that really wanted to see these guys. You're going to see them eventually in some way, shape, or form. But for now, we're just doing this fan cast and killing him off. I'm not going to make too much of the fact that they brought him in only to kill him off, because they brought in Professor X only to kill him off. And we know the X-Men are coming back. So, don't read too much into it. But it just still is interesting that he didn't last long. All right. So what does all of this mean for Quake? All right, I really want your opinions in the comments. As you know, I read them all. I respond to all of them. So let me know what you think. First question, are we going to get Quake back in the MCU? I mean, maybe people are misunderstanding what Chloe Bennett was saying. Maybe the rumors aren't going to be true. So that's really the first question. Are we getting her back? And if we are, do you think we're getting her back for Secret Invasion, which would be amazing if we got her back that soon, or are we going to get her back for Secret Wars? In fact, really, if you think about it, those are two different discussions. If she comes back for Secret Invasion, there's a better chance she's going to tie directly into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. somehow. If she comes back for Secret Wars, that could just be a variant from another world. So we'll have to see where they go with that. But that's question number one. Will we get her back? Question number two, where? But here's the biggest question. Will she be a mutant, or will she be an Inhuman? So let's take a look at this history at a very high level now. Let's, fly up in an airplane and take a 10,000-foot view of this history. I see two main phases in this whole Inhuman and mutant saga, if you will. So from 2014 to 2017, it was all about Inhumans. It was Marvel fighting with Fox, saying goodbye X-Men, goodbye mutants, hello Inhumans. It's all about Inhumans. We have Kamala Khan isn't allowed to be a mutant, right? And instead, she is an Inhuman. We have Quake being retconned into being an Inhuman. We have the Inhumans show. We have the Fantastic Four canceled, X-Men canceled, the Inhumans versus X-Men, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It was all Inhumans, no mutants. Then we look at the second phase. Fantastic Four are back, Inhumans are out, X-Men are back in, Kamala Khan is a mutant, not an Inhuman, and Black Bolt gets decimated in Multiverse of Madness. So I'm going to throw out that my opinion on the answer of what will she be is she's probably going to be a mutant. Because if they make her an Inhuman, then they have to explain the whole Terrigen story. Now, they can go with what's in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm not saying that they can't go that route. That's the real question, though. Will they? Because they didn't with Kamala. Kamala, to me, is the big hint that if they went the mutant direction with her, they may well go the mutant direction with Daisy. So, what do you think? I'll throw out a couple options. One, obviously, she's an Inhuman, ties directly back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., 100% solidifies it's all canon, end of story. Option 2, she's a mutant, leaving us scratching our heads a bit about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and like saying, okay, are you retconning Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Are you decanonizing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? What's going on? But regardless, she could be a mutant, number 2. Or my least favorite option, Marvel continues to ride the fence and just not give us an answer. She shows up in a Secret Invasion, but we don't learn where she got her powers. It's just, hey, look, it's Daisy, and she knows Nick Fury, yay, and they're hanging out, and we move on. Ugh, Marvel, please stop doing this. It's kind of what they've done with Kingpin and Daredevil. They haven't confirmed the Netflix shows are still canon, but they absolutely haven't gone against the shows, so they could still be canon. Ay, just give us an answer, Marvel. Goodness gracious. So, I fear they're going to go option 3, but my guess is ultimately they're going to go with option 2, and she's going to be a mutant, and we'll just have to figure out what that means for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay, so tell me what you think. Again, do you think she's going to show up? If so, when and in what form? Mutant, Inhuman, or they don't want to tell us? And also, don't forget, we do have a Discord server. I will put a pinned comment down there if you want to join. Lots of fun, people from every time zone, so there's always conversation going on. Love to have you join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-changing, ever non-inhuman Marvel Cinematic Universe.